and welcome back to Reflect Forward. I'm your host, Kerry Siggins, and I hope you're having a great day today. Today, I want to talk about the pros and the cons of being ambitious. A long time ago, I was talking to a fellow board member of a industry board that I'm on, and we were having a conversation about how to drive the industry forward. And we were at odds. I had this big vision for what we could do as a association, and he just wanted to keep going down the path that we were going, playing it safe. And I'm a risk taker and I don't like playing it safe and I love disruption and I love thinking big. I love 10xing myself. And so I was really pushing him and he was pushing back. And he said to me, you are so ambitious. You are such an achiever. And sometimes that's a really negative thing. And that comment made me pause. I had to giggle at it. I had to also look at myself and understand, was I pushing too hard? And I also had to just put it aside because a lot of times that's a way for people to shut down big thinkers, for people who are really trying to drive change is, oh, you're overly ambitious or you're an overachiever, as if those things are negative. And they can be negative if they're not carefully balanced. All my life, I've been really ambitious. I've always really pushed to do big things. I've also had to make trade offs in my life because of it. And I was out to dinner with a friend of mine a couple of weeks ago who is also an entrepreneur. And he and I were talking about the pros and cons of being ambitious. He too has built a big company and done all these amazing things and is at the stage in his life where he wants to focus that on something different, but still has these really big ambitions. And we were talking about the trade offs that you have to make with your time and your relationships and the other things that you have to choose not to do in your life when you're going after your goals. So that's what I wanted to talk about today because ambition is really important. It is what drives us forward. It's what helps companies do big things. It's how new innovation breaks through. But it also can lead down a dark path, which I know all about because ambition was part of the reason why I spiraled in my 20s and led to some of my substance abuse issues. Not in its entirety, just ambition. There were other things mixed in, but I was very, very driven to succeed, and my ambitious made me do things that weren't in line with my values, especially when I was in such an unhealthy place. So I thought it would be fun to discuss this in this week's episode of Reflect Forward. So let's talk about the pros of being ambitious. So I have found that being ambitious helps you achieve your goals and it helps you achieve success. So ambitious leaders are more likely to set and achieve challenging goals. I know this to be true. I have set many challenging goals for myself in my life, and I have big ones that I'm moving towards. And it really helps me stay focused and highly productive. So, one of my goals was to write a book. I did that. It was one of the most challenging things that I've ever done. And it has brought so much joy and such a sense of reward for doing that hard work. And I would never have done it if I wouldn't have set that ambitious goal of writing a book. Lots of people talk about it, but lots of people don't do it. I also have another goal that we're working on as an organization to create 1,000 millionaires through employee ownership. This is a really big goal. And the only way to do that is to build value in the company. And the only way to do that is to create real, incredible value for your customers and your employees. Let's face it. If nobody wants to buy your product or services and no one wants to work for you, you're not going to achieve your goals. So, an ambitious goal like 1,000 millionaires, that's going to require us to build the company sustainably over time, always adding more and more value to our customers so that they are loyal to us and that they want to keep partnering with us to solve really challenging problems. Having a big goal like that keeps us really focused on what we need to do well to bring the most value to our customers so we can build the most value in our company. So, those are some examples of really challenging goals. And ambition is really important in driving your career. According to a survey by Career Builder, 58% of employers say that ambition is a key factor in making promotion decisions. So, if you are a leader within your company or you want to be a leader within your company, ambition matters. So, you need to make sure that you are communicating what those goals are, what success looks like to you, and showing up in a way that brings real value to the organization, to your leader, so that they can see your ambition and they can help you grow. The second pro of ambition is it drives innovation and growth. Ambitious individuals are often at the forefront of innovation. They're willing to take risks and explore new ideas. I know this to be true One of our other goals as an organization to build that value so that we can create 1,000 millionaires is to be the category leader in computerized industrial cleaning equipment. And we want to do that worldwide. We want to have working industrial cleaning automation in every single major industrial manufacturing facility worldwide by 2040. That is going to require a lot of innovation. When you're ambitious and you're looking for ways to grow, you're more creative, you're more willing to explore new ideas, you're more willing to employ ambidextrous thinking, which is the idea that you can hold two opposing truths in your mind at the same time and figure out a way to converge them. And that can be really, really powerful. So, if you want to be innovative, if you want to unleash your creativity, your ambition really matters there. And I love this statistic provided by Harvard Business Review. They found during a study that they did that companies led by ambitious CEOs are 35% more likely to invest in research and development, leading to greater innovation and long term growth. And so that really resonates with me because that's absolutely what we're here to do. Being an employee owned company, we have this really long view. We don't feel the pressures of quarterly earnings like public companies or the pressures of fast growth like private equity owned companies. We can have this long vision of what it's going to take to have that type of technology that will be in every single heavy industrial manufacturing facility in the world through our product development and through our innovations. So, ambition can lead to that innovation and growth. The third pro of being ambitious is that you usually have increased motivation and engagement. I know this to be true. I am such a motivated person, and that causes me to be incredibly engaged in what I do, and it helps me achieve success. And I also know that while my motivation can be exhausting at times to people because I can just drive and drive and drive, and I'm always thinking 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, and how we're going to be positioning ourselves to not just be part of the industry, but really drive the industry. I also know that motivation is really contagious. My enthusiasm inspires and energizes my teams most of the time when they're not like, oh my God, more work. And it leads to increased engagement. And at Stone Age, we have a highly engaged workforce. And I think it's because people see that there's this bigger picture. They see that senior leadership led by me, it's really ambitious. We have these big, ambitious goals. And we do it in a way that takes care of people and that brings people along and asks for people's inputs and gives people autonomy in their work. So we have really high employee engagement, which we all know the Gallup statistics that more engaged employees lead to higher productivity and higher profitability. So your motivation by being ambitious can absolutely inspire others if you wield it in a healthy way. So that's a big pro of being ambitious. And finally, the fourth pro of being ambitious is resilience and persistence. Ambition fosters resilience. Why? Because you have to persevere through setbacks and challenges. You have to look at those setbacks and challenges as opportunities rather than obstacles. And when you are ambitious, you are saying, I am going to figure this out no matter what happens. So it really does help you create more resilience, more ability to bounce back and not just bounce back, but bounce forward whenever you have a setback. And I don't actually even look at anything as setbacks. Doing this for so long, being a very ambitious leader and driving change and innovation throughout our industry, we've made tons of mistakes. Things have absolutely happened that you could say, oh, well, that's a setback. But every single time we've had something like that happen, I've learned from it, or we've learned from it as an organization. We've got better because of it. So I do not look at challenges or setbacks as negative things. It's just a way to be able to reset, to learn, and to try something new that will hopefully get you onto a better path. That is the ownership mindset. It's really that idea you're responsible for everything that happens in your life. And even when things don't go the way that you expect or the way that you want, that you can learn and grow from it and turn it into something really good. And ambitious people are better at doing that because they are going to go after their goals with gusto and nothing's going to hold them back. Being resilient and persevering through tough times, that is the name of the game, especially in leadership. So, ambition really helps build that resiliency. So, those are kind of the four areas that I have found in my life that ambition has really helped me. It's helped me absolutely set huge goals and achieve them. It's helped me innovate and drive growth. It's helped me stay motivated and be highly engaged and inspires others to too. And it's helped me be able to persevere through anything and really not just bounce back, but bounce forward. But there are cons of being ambitious. And so these first three, I've definitely experienced myself. And then the fourth one we'll talk about. And I guard against it. The first is burnout. There is high risk of burnout when you are a highly ambitious person because you tend to overwork. You put in so many hours in your relentless pursuit of goals that you can become exhausted. You can stress yourself out. And I definitely have done this, especially in my early days of leadership. I share a story in my book where I had a breakdown a couple of months before I was going to give birth to my son because I had taken on so many things. I had said yes to so many things because I wanted to be part of everything. I had fear of missing out. And because I was really ambitious and I just thought I could do everything. And I realized that I couldn't do everything. And not only could I not do everything, but I didn't want to do everything. It was creating resentment in my life. And so I had to say no to things. I had to back out of commitments because I was burning out. It's definitely a downfall of ambition. And I've seen it many times where really ambitious people who haven't built that resiliency and haven't learned how to be able to rest, burn themselves out and get stressed out and then have to make a change. And it's because they're not really managing that risk of burnout. So that's the first one. The second one is strained relationship. Ambitious leaders sometimes prioritize their goals over relationships, which can strain those relationships, both personal and professional. And I definitely battle with this one because I do have so many big goals for myself and I want to achieve so much. And sometimes that can be lonely. Sometimes that pursuit of those goals is the most important thing. And it can hurt your relationships because you choose to not spend time with people that you love, or you can come across as, highly focused or even self centered on your goals. And that's tough. Like, I know I'm not easy to be married to. I know that not because I'm not a lot of fun and very kind and generous, but those ambitions and goals sometimes can say, hey, I'd rather work on this than I don't know, go play golf. Or, yes, I'm going to take on this speaking engagement because I really want to. And yes, it means I'm not going to be home this week. So, yes, that can cause strain. So, you really have to think about how you are managing that ambition and working through what that means for your relationships so that you do not leave people feeling like they are left behind or uncommunicated with. So you really have to work on balancing that to make sure that the relationships that you value in your life, that you're taking care of them and that you're communicating openly so people understand where your drive is coming from and you can understand the wishes and expectations that people have of you in those relationships. And then the third one is too narrow of a focus. I'm a big picture person, so I don't fall into this trap as much. But if you really are ambitious and you are a detail focused person and you just put your blinders on and are really intensely focused on achieving that goal, you absolutely miss other things going on around you. And some of those things could help inform things that you should be doing to be more successful or help give you warning signs that these relationships are at risk here. Or maybe you're so focused you don't understand the impact that you're having on your employees because your ambition, it's just creating those blinders. So take a step back and go, okay, what are my priorities? What am I missing as I'm really driving towards these goals? And then the fourth one is that ambition can lead to a potential for unethical behavior. In some cases, extreme ambition can cause people to do things that are questionable so that they can achieve their goals. And I definitely understand this. I write about this in the book. When I was in my very first sales job, I totally threw a friend of mine under the bus because I wanted to get a promotion. I wanted to be seen as better in my boss's eyes. And I have a ton of shame and regret around that. And I've had to work through that. That was not a cool thing to do. So I really thought long and hard about that when I moved back to Durango and I started my recovery and I started this deep dive into why I cared so much about what people thought of me and the dark side of my ambition and drive and why it was causing me to make really poor choices in my life. And I decided I never wanted to be like that. I never wanted my ambition to cause me to make unethical choices that would hurt other people. So I really learned something from that lesson back in my 20s, and I've carried that going forward. And if you talk to anybody at Stone Age, they know we're going to always do the right thing. It doesn't matter. And there's always those choices that you have to make in any business. And it can be easy to be like, that's not that big of a deal. It's in the gray area. Let's go ahead and cut this corner. And I have learned every time you cut a corner, you're willing to cut more corners. And you're also role modeling that behavior for other people. Always do the right thing. I think I shared in a podcast some time ago, but we're talking about a decision in the product development process. And we talked about skipping this portion of a regulatory process. It was like, "Ugh, we're so small, no one's going to ever know." I was like, pause, no, that is not the right thing. That is not how we show up as employee owners. And so I set the precedent with my team to say, anytime you feel pressured to cut a corner because there's pressure to get a new product launch or meet a deadline, stop and ask yourselves, is this the right thing to do? Is this role modeling the right behavior for the rest of my employee owners? And if you still feel a conflict of making that decision, come to me because I'll help make that decision. Because I know I'm always going to make the right decision. I learned so much from those lessons in my 20s about the shame and guilt and regret I felt about doing things that were in that gray area so that I could get ahead. And so I really lead my life this way. No unethical decisions, no unethical behavior, always do the right thing. But a lot of people will cut those corners. They will get into that gray area because they prioritize their ambition over doing the right thing. So that is a significant con that ambitious people always need to be aware of. So those are the pros and the cons from my experience. I'm sure that there's more, but those I think are the heavy hitters. So now let's talk about how to balance your ambition so that you can lead a happy, healthy life where you don't burn out and you prioritize your most important relationships. Here's what I do. One, I set realistic goals. Now, I have big, huge goals that I want to achieve, but you can't just go out and set those big, huge goals without chunking it down into realistic goals that you can hit over a specified period of time. So I break my big goal down to much smaller goals that allow me to attain them, allow me to feel like it's realistic and I don't have to burn out with trying to go from 0 to 60 in 2 seconds when it's going to really take me a couple of years. So if you set those realistic goals or chunk it out so that you can attain realistic goals, you can still keep looking ahead and going big, but celebrate the wins along the way. The next thing that you need to do is focus on the gains. There's this great book by Dr. Benjamin Hardy, and it's from a concept from Dan Sullivan, who is a famous executive coach called The Gap and the Gain. And I'm going to do a whole podcast on this. And so you can check that episode out in the coming months, but I'll just briefly explain it here. When you live in the gap, you're always constantly comparing yourself to some ideal version of yourself, or you are holding other people accountable, or you are judging people on the expectations that you have of them. And that's really tough. So even though you have these big goals and you have these high expectations, if you're measuring yourself against those things, then you're always going to see how you are falling short. When you measure yourself in the gain, which is looking back and saying, oh, here's all of the things that I have done to get to where I am now, it's a much more positive place to be. So I really like this concept of the gap in the gain when you're setting realistic goals. Measure yourself by the gains, how far you've come versus how far yet you have to go. And that helps manage that stress and it helps you celebrate the wins and stay in a much more positive mindset. So be on the lookout for that podcast here in the next couple of months. Okay, the second thing, foster ethical standards. Like I just said, always do the right thing. I hold myself accountable to always doing the right thing. And that has proliferated through our entire organization. So you as a leader need to establish that strong ethical framework in your own team or organization so that it guides proper decision making and it prevents unethical behaviors driven by ambition, whether that's your ambition that other people are driving towards because they feel that pressure, or there's ambitious people on your team as well who are okay with playing in the gray. So do not allow that. Those gray areas, talk about them, Have a decision-making framework that says we always do the right thing. And if someone feels pressure to not do the right thing, to go into the gray area, that should be escalated up to you as the leader. The third thing is to take care of yourself. I don't believe in work life balance. I don't know that actually exists, and it's different for everybody. Although I think that people are finding it more and more now that they're realizing, like, oh my God, I don't have to work 70 or 80 or 90 hours a week to be successful. I certainly know that I've reframed my mindset around how many hours I work and what success looks like, and how I give myself more rest and recuperation time so that I do have time to think and to drive the company forward, because I'm not just inundated with busyness. Busyness does not mean you're productive. Busyness does not lead to success. Working on the most important things and taking care of yourself leads to success. So, what does that look like? Getting enough sleep, drinking enough water, eating healthy, moving your body, meditating, and doing something that you love to do every single day. Yes, every single day. If you're not doing something that you love every single day, then what is the point? Because life is so short. So every single day, I make sure that I do something that I love. I love to exercise. So I start my day off with that. So I get two for one, exercise and something that I love. But that is what you do to take care of yourself. And you really need to foster that type of mentality within your team and company as well. Role model that for your team. Make sure that your team members are taking time off, that they are resting and recuperating, and that they feel like they have the support to go deal with their issues. And make sure that you're also promoting this within your team. Again, self care is a discipline, not a luxury. How are you role modeling that for your team? And how are you making it safe for your team members to be able to say, hey, I need a personal day here because I've got a lot going on? How are you as a company promoting wellness? Do you encourage wellness breaks and exercise and eating right and getting enough sleep? Do you create psychological safety so that people feel like it's safe to speak up? All of those things are really important in self care. So, if you don't want to burn out and you want to balance that ambition, make sure you're taking care of yourself and make sure that your team is doing the same. The fourth thing is focus on relationships. You've got to invest in building and maintaining strong relationships, both personally and professionally. So, professionally, the way that I do it, I have really meaningful relationships with my executive management team, the people who report directly to me, and many people within the company. Now, this does not mean that I'm friends with them. I am absolutely do not hang out with my employees, and I think that no leader should. But it doesn't mean that you can't have strong, really meaningful relationships with people, that there's trust in that, and that they know you, that you can be vulnerable with them. That just builds that stronger connection within your professional network. So don't be afraid to get to know your employees and let your employees get to know you, or your peers, or even your leader within your company. Those relationships are incredibly important. So take the time to build them. And then personally, right, we need people who we can lean on when the going gets tough. We need people who we can laugh with. We need people who understand us and accept us for who we are. And if we're so focused on driving our goals and we don't maintain relationships, then it can be really lonely and make it feel like it's not really worthwhile. Does not mean you have to have a lot of relationships. I have very, very few close friendships, but the ones that I do have are incredibly meaningful and helpful in my life. They're inspiring, and I make time to nurture them. I don't have time to have hundreds of friendships in my life, and that's okay. That's where I'm at in my life. And that might be where you are too, but you've got to find that right balance for yourself. So think about how you're nurturing those relationships, both personally and professionally. And then finally, number five, encourage broader perspectives. I like this one for two reasons. One, it helps you with that con that we talked about earlier of a narrow focus. When you take a step back and you see that bigger picture and you ask people for their input, you get more diverse perspectives and more holistic thinking. And so this helps you make sure that you don't put the blinders on and miss something so you can make better decisions as a leader. And the other reason that I really love this, if you don't have that narrow focus, is that it still helps you go bigger. So we just had a great day and a half planning session with my executive management team at Stone Age. And we talked about 10Xing. Like, how do we 10X? Not just from a revenue or profitability standpoint, but just how we're leveling up as a company and what kind of trade offs are we going to make? What are we going to stop doing so that we can really hone in on the things that are going to help us take that next leap as a company? we had so many fantastic ideas. And I went into it with kind of the vision of where I thought it was going to go. But because we had this conversation that allowed for broad perspectives, where everybody came from it from their departmental perspective, but also their personal perspective, we came up with some really, really fantastic steps to take and ideas to explore that I hadn't thought of in that moment. I love that because, again, the goal is the goal. And the goal doesn't have to be just you getting to that goal, doing it your way with only your idea. When you involve other people and you get those broader perspectives, it not only helps you from not having that narrow focus, it also helps you cultivate a better idea and maybe think bigger and bring people along for the ride with you, which is what most people want. They don't want to get left behind in your ambition. So, hopefully, that gave you some ways to think about ambition, whether you are a highly ambitious person like me, where your ambition can be exhausting to both yourself and to others, or maybe you're not a super ambitious person, but you want to be. And in that case, maybe pick a few things in your life that you're very passionate about or love to do, whether that's personal or professionally, and say, "Okay, what if I was really ambitious in this area? What would it look like? How would that benefit my life? And how would I make sure I find that balance?" So, to wrap things up, ambition is an incredibly powerful force that drives business leaders to achieve remarkable things. However, it must be balanced with ethical behavior, healthy work habits, and a broad perspective to avoid those potential pitfalls of driving towards your goals. By understanding and managing the pros and cons of ambition, you will be able to harness its full power to benefit both yourself and your team and company. All right, with that, I will leave you to your day. I hope you have a fantastic one. Thank you again for joining me on Reflect Forward. If you like this podcast, please share it with a friend, write a review, subscribe to it on your favorite podcast platform or on my YouTube channel. I always appreciate it. It helps with the algorithms and it spreads the word. Thanks so much. Have a great day. We'll see you next week.